right, the talk today will not be long. I know this is kind of small writing, but this is what I want you to do, if you would. Go out to the P drive for this class, all right? Find the folder with today's date on it, copy it over to your C drive, on the virtual desktop, your XAMPP, htdocs folder, and then open up these two files. And I'll give you a couple minutes to do that. I think that's the right path, but we'll find out. It's a little long, sorry. If you discover an error in anything I typed in, please let me know so I can fix it and let everybody else know. I want you to copy the folder to your htdocs, and then after you've done that, I want you to open those two files that are shown right there. Is that possible? It worked? Well, that's good. I'll give you a couple minutes, about 3:10 or so, then I'm just going to go over what I want you to do for today. Make sure that the ones you open up, before I say, nobody else does it, I did it yesterday. In the class for the first year people, I was working on a program and it wouldn't work and it wouldn't run, and John kind of says to me, you got the one on the P drive. All right. So make sure after you copy it over that the one you open up is the one that you copy over to your virtual desktop. So I could put here, on the virtual desktop. All right. Problems with that? Anybody? All right, I'm going to assume then that you have them, you've copied them over, and you've opened them. Okay, hopefully that's a good assumption. All right. What you're going to see in there, if you've got those two files open, is you've got this, which is basically the form that we're going to use. All right, that's the HTML file. And the other file that's in there, the PHP file, looks like this. All right. In other words, the guts are kind of missing. That last handout that I gave you that's got just a couple pages on it, it looks like this at the top. All right. That's got all the code in there. It's got all the if statements in there. Do you see it? It's on the back of page 1. I want you to put that in. We're going to build this as a class. I'm going to give you a lot of help building it. All right. Then when we're all done, I'm going to require that you turn it in. Does that make sense? The only person missing today is Mike, so I'll have to let him know that the next time I see him. Now Zach's in here too, as far as I remember. Ooh. No, not that Mike. Mike Lemon, who's not here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, Mike Lemon and Zach. There's 8 in the class. All right. So right now, I try to make it a little easier on you. These are our specs. Again, we're going to say all fields are required. All right. This is the stuff that we're going to get to in upcoming classes. All right. I'm going to show you how we can go and basically set up regular expression handling to do some of this stuff. How we can check the length for some of this stuff, all right, and how we can set up patterns for this stuff. Again, we're assuming right now that all of this validation is going to be done on the server. I've turned it off on the client. That's why this line that you see up here has been commented out. All right, does all that make sense? All right. And again, it is imperative that you understand that when you are doing validation, that you do both client-side validation and you do server-side validation. And we talked about this before. It is totally legal for a user to turn JavaScript off on his or her machine. All right? And if they do that, even if you put the best client-side validation in the world on the system, it's not going to do anything. All right? It's going to be skipped. So this is very similar to the stuff that we'd repeat on the client side. Now, for what we've done so far, for all this code that you have to key in, and there's a few lines, I'm not saying that there aren't, but how do you get around that in HTML? If you look up on the screen here, all we do would we'd come up to each one of these fields and we put required in there. That is literally all we'd have to do. So we're doing the equivalent of that, but we're doing it with PHP. There is no automatic required thing like that in there. So we have to program it. Does that make sense? So in essence, that is what you're doing. So if you've got little to no experience programming, and even if you do, there's advantages to this. This is not meant to be a blow-off exercise. You might think so, but it really is not. You get to start entering PHP, and when you run it, chances are pretty good you're going to make a mistake. You're going to leave off a semicolon. So you start to see if you work here and you run this thing. So if you create it in Notepad++, and then you just basically run it from XAMPP, on a scale of 1 to 10, the editor, not the editor, but the compiler and the errors you get are probably about a 5. All right, they may be better if you run it in Eclipse PHP, but I've never used that. It's on the system, I've just never used it. So again, what I want you to do is I want you to go back then So you're going to be coming in and putting all these statements in, okay? If you put all those statements in, and then I would recommend that you have XAMPP up and running already as you start doing this. But after that, then what I'll want you to do is to come in here, and if you type in this, localhost PHP form validation, validation example source, if I type that in, all right, that's what I'm going to get. And the point is, if I type that in and I check the form, I'm not putting anything in right now. Nothing. So you see what we get? That's what I want you to have, because that's doing the required field validation. Right now, it's really ugly. We'll keep refining it and refining it until it's not so ugly. But I'm more concerned right now. And if you notice in here, social security number, address, last name, address, city, state, zip, user, email, phone, age, phone, and birth date. Everybody see those? There's one missing here. Do you notice which one's missing? Address, city, state. And that's missing because on here, because on here we've got that set up as a drop-down list. So there's really no validation that we're going to have to do on it. All right? Now, once we fill it up And, you know, if you put in here your social security number, your first name, your last name, your address, your city, you don't set the state, and you put in your zip and your user, etc., it's going to say you live in Alabama. I don't care about that right now. All right? And working with drop-downs in PHP, it's not problematic, but it's got a little bit more work that you have to do with them. I don't want to get into that right now. So what I want you to do is to put in the required field checks. Then what we're going to end up doing Tuesday of next week is we're going to look at the other stuff. Hopefully you notice that really the stuff that's in here, the first name, the last name, the address and the city, they're almost identical. Does that make sense? There's a little bit of difference between them. The size might be different. Some stuff may allow blanks, or whatever, and some stuff might not. So that what we're going to do then on Tuesday of next week is I'm going to show you how to do one or two of these. Then I'm going to say, now you go do those. See what I'm saying? I'm not going to give you that code. Then again, we're not going to worry about that. Then I will show you how to set up the regular expression pattern for the zip code. If you go, geez, I want to know right now, I can't wait until Tuesday. I'd be real surprised if you said that. But if you said that, just so you know, you can always go out and do things like PHP zip code regular expression pattern. This is what we're going to be talking about. All right, this is what we're going to be talking about. I don't know which one of these will work. There, this one's fine. By next week, we'll have gone over the stuff that you see there in blue. All right. The reg match, reg is short for regular expression, which is what this is. We're trying to match it. The P is PHP. So it's a PHP regular expression match. So what we're saying is, and here we're just supposing it's got to be 5 digits, so we'll fix this. This says that the zip code has got to start with, and that's the caret sign, it's got to start with any digit 0 through 9. There must be 5 of them, and it must end them. Does that make sense? And then I'll show you, again, we can go back and do this. PHP zip 5 or 9 character zip code regular expression validation pattern. All right? So it's the JavaScript one, but hopefully what you're going to find out after we look at this, it's almost the same thing in PHP, because regular expressions are regular expressions. So my hope is, and maybe this is a little too altruistic on my part, maybe I'm just way too hopeful, but my hope is that by next week, by Thursday, that we'll have all of this done, our first pass. It won't look pretty, but it'll be functional, all right? Then we'll start to pretty it up after that. Then we'll eventually, the idea, and I mentioned this to you the other day, you may or may not have heard me say this, but the idea is, I don't need that, eventually what we want, all right, we want to change that to PHP, but that's no biggie, is we want the error messages to appear right here. And what we're going to do, instead of having an HTML file that calls a PHP file, are you listening? Instead of having an HTML file, we're going to stick everything in our PHP file, including our form. And then after we do that, we're going to say, you know what? That's kind of ugly. So I'm going to show you how you can literally do what's called include that HTML right inside of your form with one line of code. All of this with one line of code. Huh? With one line of code. It's not hard. It's interesting. I'm going to put this out there, not right now, but I'm going to put this out there later. And this is for those of you who are in, well, you're all in that class this morning, because Mike sent me an email, and I thought at least it was kind of funny, but I got a weird sense of humor. And he said, Jeff, just so you know, this morning when you were telling people about the requirements they're going to have to create for the website, he said, I looked around and I saw a few people with deer in the headlights looks. So he went out and found some specifications for websites, and I got to put that out there, including this thing, which is kind of a template for how you might want to set up a website. And we'll talk about that, not now, but when the time comes. All right? So kudos to him. Thank you to him for doing that. Do you understand what you're supposed to do? And I decided to do it this way because, again, in the past, and I think John can attest to this because he was here last year, we had a lot of lecture. Then we had a week of lab. Then we had a lot more lecture. Then we had a week of lab. And I'm thinking by doing it this week, what I'm doing is I'm minimizing the lecture and trying to maximize the amount of work I'm making you do. I'm still doing the work. I mean, I'm going to give you the code, or we're going to look at an example or whatever. I'm still going to do it. And when we get all done, I'll put the final end product out there, even if it's in stages. If we get done with stage 1, boom. And I think that's going to help, especially when we go into code that's more difficult to do. I'm going to show you this. I think I've got it out there, and then I'm done talking. But I want to show you this because, again, if the folder's not out there, I can't show it to you. I don't have it. All right. The homework that I gave last year, one of the first homework assignments that I gave last year was I literally set up, I had people do it themselves, set up an HTML form, all right, and then do all the validation with PHP. I might give you almost the same assignment. The good news is you'll have done one harder than what the assignment will be. But you'll have done it, you'll have gone through the trials and tribulations of doing it, so hopefully the act of you doing it will be fairly simplistic. That's the hope. All right? So you've got the code that you're supposed to key in. Hopefully there aren't any questions about where you're supposed to key it in. If you don't like the way, and Amanda, this is more, I guess, for you, just so you know, as an example, when you go through this stuff, I just want to show this to you, that if you type, for example, if x greater than 3, now this is how I do it, you know, like y equals 6, j equals 10. All right, this is how I do it. Now, some purists of PHP say, oh, no. You take that curly brace and you put it on the same line, and you either have this one on a line by itself, or you even include. I don't care. Now, again, I'm not being funny. I don't care how you do that. You are establishing your own standards, and that's fine. So I would never, ever take off for stuff like that. So if that looks better to you or is easier for you to understand, all right, that's fine. Yeah, most books you'll see it like this. Most books you'll see it either like this or you'll see it like this. And what I'm saying is I don't care which one you use. But I would like, for your sake, more than mine, be consistent. It's much easier if you're consistent to do this stuff. All right? Questions on anything I've given you? No, and you say, well, geez, do I have to do this now? Or, you know, Kelly's just going nuts over his Java. So he can keep doing Java if he wants, but I'm going to expect by the time we reconvene here next Tuesday, everyone's is done. That will include Zach, and that will include Mike. All right? So if you happen to see them in another class, you might want to mention that to them. And, well, what if they don't? Okay, then they don't. But I'm going to go on assuming that you've already got that stuff done, and next week we're going to start going over that stuff assuming that's done. Does that make sense? All right. So you've got, you know, an hour and a half. Even if you're a slow typist, you should have time in an hour and a half to get that done, I would think. And although it'll be 9 weeks, all right, remember at 9 weeks, we're already in week 2, right? You guys realize that at the end of next week, at this time next week, that we're, you know, it sounds weird to say it like this, but for the semester, we're what, 3 weeks of the way through already? And at 9 weeks, you're going to do an eval. So if at that point you say, you know what, you've changed your pedagogy, the way you teach, and I think it really bites, then write that down when you're doing, you know, I think I'm forcing you to do more work, but you're doing the work you should be doing as opposed to sitting there listening to me for hour after hour. And I told my wife that, she says, your students actually have you 8 hours in one day? And I said, yeah. She said, do you pay them? You know, she's like, geez, it's enough for me to put up with you for 8 hours on a day and a weekend. All right, that's it.